night before they got home, and then they found out they had to work on Monday, so then they did some
They're both together. So peace of mind for you, huh?
They're like
things that are
Yep.
right?
And it'll be on board docs with our computer. So everything right here.
Where does it say that?
It doesn't.
That's why I'm bringing that. I'm trying to find all these rules that were like, so the last time I missed a lot in a couple days. And I even did my homework, like you told me to, and I still missed the whole bunch. So you have to go. Already get these and just what is that? I've been So, what's that? So this means that we're not going to hear from
All you do is say I do. Yeah, I know. Sneaky. I know. Sneaky. I get it.
I probably did. It's all because of me, but
I wouldn't want to do it anyway.
because I asked for it. I specifically asked for this stuff on the agenda. It's not on it.
Good thing the clocks are out there following us.
Ask that too.
You're right.
5 minutes late.
There it goes. Clocks on the other end.
Oh, you didn't believe me until you were in the shoes I was in. That's how it goes.
Oh, 5:31. I'm right on
I
time.
was actually right here both times. 5 minutes
No,
late.
you're just right. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. I
We'll
won't.
give the superintendent a minute or two to get here.
You're on TV, so smile pretty. You're on mine.
Great. So next time I won't go to my sweater.
Superintendent's report.
I was going to.
So Travis, were you saying something's changed? No?
You just didn't get one? Did you get one? When you sold yours? Yeah, I did. So I don't know why she gave me another one. I guess I can put it with my stuff. We did it when we enrolled our times.
I didn't get one.
Yeah, when I said paperwork home. I don't know. I didn't.
You got one. Your wife got one.
Yeah.
You're just you like to see it.
And it looks
Did you get one? I've never seen it. My wife got one. You're in the same boat as I am.
Good. How are you?
Pretty much as much as your kids.
Hey, Chromebook?
No.
Yeah, I did. I trust your car. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. At 5:37, according to this board time. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I have a question before we adopt the agenda, about the agenda.
We have a motion first, and we'll discuss it.
I'll move
Moved by Melissa.
with the possibility of an amendment to the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Let's hear.
The agenda that went out on Friday to us is different than the agenda in the book this evening. And then I went back and looked, and I see that the superintendent report is moved up to the 2 point whatever, and public presentations is no longer there in the current agenda. So I would guess I would ask that public presentations for the board be added back to the agenda.
You just change the order.
Of number 3.
Should be 3.1.
That it's missing. It always used to be 2.1 or what? It's 3.
So I think just the meat or the
2 point, it used to just be number 2. Number 2 used to just be public presentations to the board. 2.1, questions from the floor. Any persons, parents, patrons, students, or tribal officials wishing to speak to the board, 5 minutes recommended for each speaker, is missing off the agenda. And then, I'm not done yet. Also, we have always had an executive session at the end, and it was on the other ones, and it's on the window posted out front. But I see that it is missing from this agenda.
And you wanted to have executive session, correct?
Correct, but I also would like to speak as to why the change in the agenda on such short notice, and I didn't receive an email to the changes or notification.
Well, for one thing, we're going to have the executive session, but I think if you remember our attorney talking, when they talked about executive session, it should be for a specific reason. We should cite the law and the specific reason we're having an executive session. And up until tonight, Dr. Whitney did not realize that we were having, I just mentioned that we were probably going to have it, so we'll have the executive session. But usually it's for specific numbers, for a specific item, and we're supposed to cite the, specific law. That's why it wasn't put on this one. If we have anything in the future, we will put it on. As far as the public presentations to the board, if you remember the discussion that we had, I believe with our attorney and on the board docs, we talked about the problem with public presentations to the board is there's no real opportunity for open dialogue and we can actually discuss issues. And you know that as people just sitting here talking, we don't respond, we don't do anything. So I think it was advertised in the paper last week, okay, that people wish, and it goes right along with the gavel training and everything else, people that want to talk to the board just come get put on the agenda, and then that way we can have an open dialogue and we can actually discuss your issues rather than just having a time when they just talk and talk and talk.
When was this discussed with the whole board so a decision could be made by
I
the
don't
whole
think it
board?
was discussed with the whole board.
So was
Supposed to be.
it a decision you made yourself?
I talked to the superintendent about it, and it also goes back to the gavel, and also the attorney talking, and probably most other schools in the state. They just don't do that.
In our policy book, though, we have public presentations to the board, so if we took it off, we're not following policy.
We're in the policy book.
I just looked at it when I came, it's like G8 or something,
Is that for,
public presentations to the board. No, it says we allow public presentations to the boards.
And we do allow them.
So why was it taken off without the majority of the board agreeing with it?
I think it was on the license that it should be through the agenda process. So we're following all the meeting laws, that everything should be on the agenda.
Yeah, but that still should have been brought to the entire board based on your discussion with the attorney and not just unilaterally made by 2 people when there are now 5 board members.
I guess it's probably because when you set the agenda, the board president kind of sets the agenda with the superintendent. Probably that's it. Because the board president and the superintendent set the agenda based on people wanting to be on the agenda.
But I think huge changes like this the entire board should be informed of them. I think we've had this discussion in the past about how some decisions are being made and the rest of the board is being left out in those decisions.
well, we'll talk about this. And you want executive session at the end
Yes, I do, for personnel.
or personnel?
And I'm going to ask that items number 5.2, 5.3 be moved to executive session. I'm going to ask that on 5.8, that the transfer of the custodian, head-to-head custodian, also be moved and separated to
I
executive
think what we
session.
do, if I remember right, is we would just have all of 5.8 on the
That's
executive
fine.
session rather than separating them out.
That's fine.
Remember?
And I'll excuse myself from 5.8 discussion with the head custodian, that's my cousin.
Thank you. Any more discussion? I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
One more, if I can.
Yeah.
4.6, I'd like to be taken off. That was in the minutes, and I don't know when, but I was asked to be taken off before, so for some reason my name is still
Oh,
on
okay.
As a character.
Yep.
All right, we'll take you off. Anything else?
Shirley, just a clarification on the meetings too. We need to change that to October 26th, to Monday, for the next upcoming board meeting.
Okay.
In the meeting section, it lists it down,
Yeah,
and it's got a
it's down there.
September.
it's got an old one on there.
Anything else?
Well, if you're asking. Mine says October 26th.
It does.
Mine does that.
Any other changes? Well, the motion is second to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes, September 24th and October 8th.
I'll move.
Moved by Melissa, seconded by Evie. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Oath of office.
I'll go ahead and read it,
Go ahead.
if that's okay. Gina, welcome. With that, I'll go ahead and ask, do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, and that you will faithfully and impartially perform your duties as a member of the school board of the Todd County School District, Todd County, South Dakota, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
We do.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report.
We have cake. Did you see the cake? To celebrate action.
Superintendent's report.
Oh, I always thought we were going to eat cake, but okay. The first thing, I have a lot of reports on there, and I'm not going to go into depth with all of them. Some of them were at the request of a board member that wanted some information. So most of that is there with the exception of a few items that we're still gathering. That's why all of those reports are there. I will say, we did receive a letter from the Alumni Association. They wanted to thank the district and all the building principals and the board for their support of their reunions, for the use of the facilities, the equipment, and supplies. So they're very grateful, so I shared that. The enrollment, our student count date was 2,081 students. I don't know what it was last year, I can look it up, but I think it's similar within about 30 students. So you have a breakdown of the enrollment of our students. I will also bring up at this time, we had a meeting with tribal truancy. St. Francis was there, building principals were there, Brian Burnett was there. We're talking about the attendance, and attendance is a big issue in our district. We've talked about that before, and we're going to keep talking about that, and we're trying to do some partnershiping with the educational committee. We're going to ask to be on their agenda and share some of the information to see if we can come up with some ideas to help each other so we can get the kids in school. Because we have 112 students as of that meeting that we filed truancy on. And we are only 26 days into the school year, and 126 students have missed one attendance. So we're very concerned about the attendance. I did a report just for, since our last board meeting when we talked about it to today, what was our attendance for the district? It's below 90% now, it's 89%, which is below what it was a couple years ago. So attendance is a big issue that we need to talk about. Last Friday, Erin and I made an appointment and went and talked to Dr. Melody Shop at in Pierre, the State Department of Ed. We talked to her and Shannon Malone. We talked about a lot of issues, a lot of things with the district, and she gave us a lot of encouragement. She seems to be very aware of the issues that we're facing and where we're at academically with our achievement scores and our struggle with attendance. She even talked about at the State Department, what they had done is they had plotted all the districts, the schools, high achievement down to the lowest achieving. Then on top of that, they laid out their attendance rates. And lo and behold, they all correlate. Okay, so the schools that have great attendance are the highest performing schools. The schools have the lowest attendance rates, have the lowest academically performing schools. So it is an issue and it's something that we have to keep addressing, that we have to be constantly vigilant with, working with the courts, with the tribe, and doing our part as well. And I feel like we've put a lot more intervention steps in there, communicating and trying to work with families. This year, we added some steps to intervene earlier because we don't want the attendance to continue to be the problem if we can do some things to stop it. We also talked to her about the End-to-Star system. Dr. Costers comes. The school has been doing that for 3 years now, and going through that process, it's very cumbersome. It takes a lot of the time of the administrators, the teachers, so they meet in these meetings and they're always trying to figure out how to fill out this form to report to the state. And so we asked her, we are doing this, we've created this template, which they're going to present. This is how we want to hold teachers, students, us accountable. We would like to opt out of this other cumbersome, and she said yes. She liked what we presented, what the data is, what we're trying to do. We're going to report on it every month. So she has given us the go-ahead, but we don't have to do that anymore. We can do what we're going to do because they're going to report to me, they're going to report to you. We're all going to be accountable to each other. So she liked that system. She was very appreciative. We talked about some of the changes we've made this year in the district and why we made some of the changes, which she was very grateful for, that we're trying to address them. We're not trying to do crazy things, different things. She liked the fact that we're narrowing our focus and be very driven on certain things like attendance and achievement, things we're doing in the classroom with our staff and our students. She thought if we narrowed that and didn't have a bunch of things going all at once, that we would be able to manage what we have to progress. And we're doing maps. We'll be done with that in about a week or so, and then come November, we'll be reporting those results to you. So we're going to have our own growth model so we can track our growth using that MAPS data. So that was exciting. It was exciting for our principals, exciting for our teachers, because now when they meet in their building leadership teams, they can talk about those things that mean a lot to us, which are attendance and that achievement using that MAPS data. So I just feel like we're going to be more focused. We're going to work smarter to try to get things turned around. So that was a very good meeting. She was very encouraging and very supportive of anything that we asked for. She said all our schools that are in priority can apply for SIG grants, which are big money, for 5 years. So you could do something big. We talked about year-round school. She would like to see a district or a school have an extended school year, so our students would be in the classroom more. So all of those things, she's very supportive of those ideas that we can talk about, especially if we can get those SIG grants. Those are big money. So that's, one more thing that came up today was kind of resolved. You may have heard about it in the community. I don't know, a week, 2 weeks ago, there was a fight, a pretty big fight at the park right after school involving a lot of our high school students. And it kind of started in the school, but I think they had the idea, well, we'll take care of this after school. And so we had a student, a couple of real serious injuries came out of that fight. And so there was a lot of unrest. Should the schools do something? Should there be school consequences, even though it didn't happen on school property? We weren't quite certain how to act with that, so I consulted the school attorney, and he said, yes, if it started at school, if we were involved in it, and they just crossed over the border and had the fight outside, school consequences could apply. Well, it's kind of 2 weeks after the fact, so we're trying to figure out, and it involves a lot of kids, because there weren't just the kids fighting, more kids jumped in, more kids were egging them on. We're talking a big number of kids. We don't want to suspend all these kids out of school, so we're trying to figure out moving forward and talking to our kids, educating our parents, updating our policy to let them know that your behavior, even if you step outside the boundaries, is still important to the district, especially if you put a uniform on and you represent this school. Your behavior matters, and so you should be held to that standard. So in coming up what would be appropriate at this point in time, 2 weeks after the fact, they are going to be working on some community service and school service projects. All the kids that are involved, we have some videotape, we have some documentation, and the high school administrators are going to be talking to those kids, talking to the parents, and putting that in place so they give back to the school and the community, try to make up for it going forward. So I just wanted to let you know going forward, if you hear anything about that, that's how that came about.
Any questions?
On your enrollment
Yeah.
for alternative ed, Mr. Garriott, Mr. Robertson, and Mr. Whiting, you show 13 total for a GED program alternative. So is that 3 certified teachers to 13 kids?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Anything else?
I do. So there was a couple other reports. The most significant, I think, is the Department of Interior.
I just wrote a letter today to request
What is
the facilities to ask
Yeah.
for those schools.
asked for what?
New schools.
So you wrote a letter to
Wayne Rebel.
Department of Interior?
Yes. And you can review that letter and send it. I just wrote it through.
Okay. And so reading through this, like, so I'm assuming, I haven't physically went to the buildings and seen, but these are posted. This is posted at every facility needs to be.
Should be.
And just for the record, 3 of these schools are considered to be condemned and destroyed. And we have our children and our staff there. And so that is a huge concern to me, liability-wise, safety and health-wise. And I mean, we've known about this for quite some time. And I just kind of wanted some discussion on what steps have been taken so far to address that, Mr. Blonsky.
You want to jump in about working with the Bureau to fix some of these, the history of this?
I mean, these have time frames, so some days, like some of them say they need to be corrected within 1 day, some say 15,
Oh, yeah.
some say 180, like, do we
This
have a...
has been an ongoing deal probably for
So
the
do we have
past.
an ongoing evaluation that shows this deficiency was supposed to be corrected in this amount of time, and this is where we're at right now? It was either corrected or no, it's not because of X, Y, Z.
Being a public school, they did not allow us into the system that tracks and monitors that like a normal tribal school would.
So you can't
we
just
ran
create
into
your-
that bureaucracy. So what we've tried to do is work direct with the local office in order to come up with plans and how we're going to try to take care of some of the stuff that is our responsibility. Now within the leases itself, the bureau is supposed to take care of major repairs. And we've got currently, or within a 25-year lease that was signed in probably 2006. And it's very specific in there whose responsibility it is for what in those buildings. So there are a lot of hoops that we as a school district have to jump through in order to just try to do any sort of maintenance and remodeling within the facilities.
Okay, so I totally understand that part.
Okay.
So I'm crystal clear on that part. What I'm not crystal clear on is how do we allow our children and our staff to be in such unsafe conditions? And how are we monitoring, regardless if it's a BIA building or not, how are we monitoring these deficiencies and ensuring that they're getting completed, and if not, then maintaining documentation for the district in case a lawsuit or something comes in the future? What do we have to stand on? All we have right now is a report showing us how
Yeah,
unsafe
that's the safety
those
report.
environments are.
And we do have documentations in regards to the items that we have taken care of throughout the years.
But I mean,
we also have
just since May
documentation.
15th, though.
Yes,
Since May
that,
15th.
the
when
last
we got
safety
this?
report, and it comes out yearly.
Okay.
And that was the first
So-
year that 2 of our
so
facilities
since-
actually were recommended to be demolished.
I know, and
To-
that's scary, especially as a parent and knowing if my child's in that school and this is being evaluated, saying it's unsafe. Like, I
One of the schools
I
is
have,
Enoch, right?
yeah, no, it was Spring Creek.
Spring Creek.
And Oak Creek are the two that are concerned.
But, I mean, that's huge, raises huge concerns for me as a board member and responsible for this district. Like, ethically, morally, legally, moving, like, how do we allow this? And when can we stop pointing the finger at each other and, like, start working together to make it better? So I'm interested to see what your letter says and really what their response is. But I mean, I
I
think
think
that
it's gonna
this
take more than one
opens.
letter from me to get the thing going. I think.
Well, yeah,
This has been
I plan on
ongoing for
sending
years,
it, right,
Yeah.
because I think I need more support than just me writing a letter, probably.
Oh, no, I think we need tribal support. We need,
Yeah.
this goes all the way back. 3 of our schools were recommended in the top 10 in the country in order to be replaced by the Bureau.
From
2004, and
2003.
I've got the plans that architects from the Bureau actually did to replace the Oak Creek School. So it went all the way to the point of our architects' designs, drawings, in which we have all those documents on. Somewhere along the line in 2004 to 2005, somebody in DC decided that they were going to pull the funding for that. Now, we've taken that on ever since that time, since 2004, and we've had many meetings, and it all depends on who the figurehead is in regards to how responsive they've been in working with us. Now, the current director of Bureau of Indian Affairs is
Department of Interior.
Department of Interior, Kevin Washburn from Oklahoma, has not been very receptive and has basically tried to wash his hands of this. It's a great question, and legally, whose responsibility is it?
Yeah.
And it's a great question that I think we need to start digging into. It's to a point now where, with those recommendations for demolition, it's really in their lap to get something done. Evie, these agreements have gone on since 1952.
okay, I've been on here since 3 months ago. So
Right.
I'm just saying, like, today, like, moving forward, then we need to schedule a special meeting just to discuss the safety issues at these schools and invite those stakeholders in, whether it's, tribal council or tribal president and education committee, and get a plan together and get the support and go say, like, this is unacceptable for the health and safety of our
Yeah,
children
absolutely agree.
and our staff. Like, this can't.
We need to get on their
This
agenda
is
at the
sickening.
tribe, get them to help us with this.
Yeah, or invite the tribe here. Invite them here. Let's go visit the schools. Let's go do a walkthrough. Let's go see what these kids have to go through every day in the staff. Let's go see the conditions that they are in 8 hours out of every day. I mean,
When I used to work for the school district, it was back in 90, whatever, I went around to those schools and took pictures. When I used to work for Dennis for federal programs, that was one of the things that he was working on, was trying to get these schools replaced. And I went around and took pictures. I don't know if those pictures still exist. I don't know where they're at, but I know that I took numerous pictures of all schools throughout the district. So that's something we can look into too.
and I may sound frustrated, and I'm not pointing at you saying all you guys knew about this whole time. I'm just frustrated at the situation, and I just want to be a part of the solution. And if we can't, we can't accept it's your responsibility, and then saying no, it's yours. We can't. Like, we need to develop a plan and to address this. And really, I don't know that we would be not held liable if something bad happened in one of those schools.
We do have the alternative to pulling all the kids out and moving all the mission.
To where? To where?
Yeah,
So
see,
that really is an alternative.
No, what I'm saying, the problem is if the buildings are that bad, maybe we can't get anybody to do it, health and safety is an issue. I'm not saying do it, I'm saying that would be one alternative, to moving someplace else. It's not the alternative anybody wants, but that would be the bottom, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but what's in this report, I'll leave it at that, but I will ask that we have a special meeting to address a plan of action to ensure the health and safety of those children and that staff in those schools. And then another thing I had a question on is this. Okay, well, I'll discuss that in executive session.
Anything else for Dr. Whitney?
Is this report going to be on the next? The security is going to be on the next.
No, he's here.
No, I know, but it's going to be on the next section, or is it going to be?
It's coming up.
It's coming up.
It's coming up.
Okay, then that's
Okay,
it.
any other questions, Dr. Whitney? Hearing none, we do have the Honorable Troy Heinrich here, who perhaps would like to tell us about the Blue Ribbon Task Force.
Well, thank you, Mr. President and board and Dr. Whitney. Yeah, I just happened to be here for some reason,
Kate.
to come.
Kate.
Exactly. No, as many of you know, I'm on the Blue Ribbon Task Force that the governor set up to talk about teacher salary and teacher recruitment retention. So far, those meetings there's been a lot of them. Personally, I don't feel like we've accomplished anything. We are 51st in the nation. I visited with Chad about this. We have one meeting left before our report is due to the governor. Where we want to get is to raise teacher salaries by about $8,000 per teacher in the state. Move us from 51st to 39th. So we're not going for number one, we're going for 39th. So, but anyway, that is a huge difference for South Dakota. 9,300 teachers, that equals about $74 million. Some of the questions we've had are, as many of you guys know, we pay a lot of people, counselors, other support staff on the teacher's salary. That is not figured into that 9,300 teacher mark. Support specialists, things of that nature. So in all likelihood, it's going to be $100 million. Our Republican-controlled legislature thinks that we can do most of that through efficiencies. I don't agree. I've seen the numbers. You know, they're thinking we will do $30 million by combining our food service director with White River's food service director. This is truly an east-west problem. They want some schools to combine over there that are small by choice. And we have districts over here who are small but have huge geographic distance. So that is a big issue. It's going to be a big fight. The latest talk was a 1 cent sales tax raised about $200 million per year. So everything goes from 4 cents to 5 cents. Our caucus is going to push for, if that's the best plan imaginable, we want to remove all tax on food. Takes away about $75 million. So we're going to put us at $120 million. We'll put $20 million into property tax reduction. Take that $100 million directly to teacher salaries. There is a big push right now for the 65% solution, which to me is ridiculous because all it's going to say is 65% of your school aid formula has to go to direct support services, meaning teachers. Well, that's fine. You can pay your teachers whatever, but you still need this amount of money to run your school. So there's still a lot of fight to be had. I'm not convinced that our Blue Ribbon Commission is going to come out with anything positive or passive. I'm not sure the plan that we're working on some plans in case we don't get what we think we need. We're going to bring some bills. Senator Sutton and I are going to bring some bills that range from personal income tax all the way to a half a penny tax to raise money. We know we need new money. There's some things that actually are decent. I think if we could get Chad and the rest of the business managers to agree that if we provide them a consistent funding source, we won't have large school reserves. And I know, our district is a little different than the other districts I represent, but I think we can get them to agree that, and we'll have a cap on our reserves. Moving our mill levy 5 cents from capital outlay to our general fund, nobody really knows the difference other than the district. It doesn't affect the taxpayer that much. But there's lots of fight yet to be had with only one meeting. I'm still going to hold out hope. I'm still going to be positive. We have some very smart people on that committee. But it's a chess game, and we're going to have to see what is doable and what is passable. But hopefully we can get an $8,000 raise to all our teachers. The biggest issue that we've talked about really is everybody's always said it's a supply problem. We don't really have a supply problem in South Dakota. The problem is our teachers aren't staying here. They want to go teach in Sioux Falls. They want to teach in here. They want to teach in other areas, and those guys have the votes in place. I mean, they just have the numbers. So we need to look at that. How do we retain people? And what can we offer as a district, whether that's through housing or benefits or some tuition reimbursement that can attract them here, they stay here. Because we know that when we have good teachers who are consistent, that shows the best gains with our kids. So that's something we're working on. I'm also working on a plan to try to get our own growth. We're going to have to grow our own here. We're going to have to use Cente. We're going to have to use our parapros and offer them a way and a livable wage while they're taking their classes, while they are doing extra study to be certified teachers. And we're going to have to do that, some of that legislatively through alternate certification and some things, but not unlike what happened with my dad 45 years ago, the teacher corps program. I mean, he came, he was from here, they helped him finish up, he was staying here, he lived here, he knew everybody, and he lived here till he died. And that is, we're gonna have to do that if we want consistency for our kids and somebody that they can relate to. So that's where we're at on Blue Ribbon. I'm also part of the Native American Student Achievement Advisory Council set up by the governor. This could have some effects on Scott County. There's some really good things that I like what we're doing, and I think it's things that we can do now. I think it's things that we are doing now. One thing that they're kind of pushing for is more or less a charter school. That's going to take away state funding. That's all there is to it. And you start taking away state funding, every district is going to hurt. So I don't know what, we have 2 more meetings with that before that report goes to the governor. And then it's going to have to go to the legislature. So there'll be lots of wrangling between that. What I do like is instant education for all. We should be doing that. And it's not difficult. It's no different than what Chris did in his classroom, what I did in my classroom, what any teacher is doing around here. It's how do we integrate how we live, who we are, where we work, and where we're at now into everyday class. And I learned a lot of that from Linda, and it's not difficult to do for the rest of South Dakota. So we are going to be pushing that. Is it passable legislatively? I don't know. Is it doable through the Department of Ed? Probably. I mean, I know they're really working on our Ocheti-Shaponi standards, kind of the Wola Kota project. They're supportive of that. They're getting outside people to come in and say, this is all right. This is going to help all of our kids. So, I'm hopeful and positive on that. Just listening to your conversation earlier and Amy's question, I have absolutely no problem introducing a resolution, which it's not legally binding, but it is something that would be sent from the Senate and the House in the South Dakota and signed by the governor to the Congress, asking for a new school. When we start pitching our plan for new schools, and I know what you feel, maybe those schools were the same way when I was sitting in that very same seat. So it's difficult, and it's bureaucracy, and it's terrible, but I have no problem bringing a resolution, and I know that would pass. It'd fly through the Senate, fly through the House when we explain our situation. It might require somebody to come up and testify when it comes up, but if you think that would help, I'd be glad to do that. That's kind of where we're at. School funding. I would expect that school funding is going to be the #1 issue of the state legislature this year. That and guns, because guns also. But if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Do I don't have a gun? You don't have a gun.
Would you go up to legislation?
Now
I was just making sure she was going if you're saying that.
I really love that.
Hot topic.
I will.
Any questions for Troy?
I have one question.
Sure.
So when they were revising the South Dakota Social Studies standards, why didn't they use those social standards? Because that would be Indian education for all. Why didn't they look at those and incorporate those?
Well, the report given in the paper was not entirely accurate, because what happens is they changed it grade level, and they required some grade levels to, and schools have to, agree, do they want to teach a world history or a early American history from 1850 to whatever. They had it all broke down. So schools still had some leeway to
Yeah,
teach.
no offer.
But on the back side of that, the department is really pushing the Ocheti Shoponi standards. So, and which isn't a pullout or a history.
I was just disappointed that they didn't.
Yeah, it's not, the article that came out is not exactly representative of what is going on. Just trust me, that was the first thing I said, and I called the department and I said, what is going on? And when they explained to me how it's working, and we're trying to make this so it is all inclusive in everything we do. It's not, we're not history. We're still here. We're still alive. We still function. This is what our life was like pre-colonial. This is what our life was like during the treaty times. This is what our life is like now. And we're going to just roll on from that.
So if we choose to opt them in our district, we can do that.
Language is another thing. We can still do Lakota language. It'll still count on our kids' transcripts. It'll still count as a language credit. I checked on that specifically. We can still do integration in all class subjects with our language. The department has no problem with that. So,
Thank you.
Charter, looking good or not looking good
I think it's going to be very hard.
to get passed?
Yeah. That's going to be very difficult because you're talking state money to private schools. They're just, and what opens the door? What, we do it just for our kids. Sioux Falls, Fred Young. Rapid, Fred Young. Say, well, we want our school. You did it for these guys. And I think of anything, that probably has the most difficulty coming through the legislature.
Question, but if attendance is one of our biggest concerns, wouldn't attendance be a charter school's biggest problem too? I mean, if they're not coming to school at the public school level, they're not going to come to school at the charter school level.
The charter school isn't going to take the kids to that.
And so how is that fair to those of us that work in the public sector? So,
Well, exactly. I mean, that is one of the arguments on charter school. I mean, that's what's going to come up in the legislature. They're going to say, well, you're going to cherry pick all the good kids, and you're going to show all these games, and you're going to take the kids that have the parents and that are involved, and we're left with everything else, and that's.
so I'm hoping you're against the whole charter school thing, right?
I want to hear their plan. I guess we're still talking about it. Are there some things in the charter school model that I like, or there's some things curriculum-wise that I really like, expectation-wise that I really like. But none of what I've seen in that charter school model is anything different than what we can't do right now. I mean, we have the authority or, as a district, to tell the Department of Ed, this is what we want to do. We want to bring in more speakers. We want to do more culture. We want to do this. And the Department of Ed is going to say,
Yeah, they're
That's-
open.
I mean, so there's things that are working in charter schools that we can do right now, right here. But we have to get parental on.
And just on the other side of that, it's not like handpicking, like how it was previously explained in like some of the experiences I've had with charter schools and information I've received. Like their inner city project area charter schools that have the same challenges that we're having right now have attendance, that those kids have failed, that those schools have the same issues that we had, and they ended up going to a charter school and now are all, there's a charter school in Texas that 100% of them are going to college, and they have a college signing day for 100% of their students. So it's not, it's really how it's ran, and it's really how the vision of that organization, whether it's a charter school, a public school, or a private school, that strategic plan and that vision of that organization with leaders within that system that can make it happen. So unfortunately, with our district, we have a very high, or a lot of kids, and charter schools have less population, but I would disagree with the prior, in my experience, just saying that.
I would agree. I would agree with you, Evie, that those schools have shown gain. The difference is we can do that now.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the issue is money. Who's going to provide? Because the state of South Dakota, it gives money to public school. It is in our Constitution that we have to provide a free and public education.
And they
Free
can't even.
and public. That is, and that's not in our Constitution. And in a state like South Dakota where our budget isn't finite, and we've seen what our budget does, and we've seen what a 10% cut to a district does, and that's huge. And trust me, I'm not a budget fan of South Dakota. We put over $100 million extra into reserves in the last 4 years. We put $20 million extra this year alone. And I sat right there and told people, we don't have the money. And then come to find out, it was really there, but we didn't want to tell you. So there's nothing that those charter schools are doing that we can't do.
This looks like something for a long discussion. I think we gotta move on.
Yep,
So,
move on.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you for your time.
Dana?
I believe everyone has a copy of the middle school report in their packet. I think probably the most concerning, well, just to start off, is first and foremost our attendance, which Dr. Whitney has already addressed. But how our staff attendance is worse than our student attendance. We are working very strategically to increase student attendance. We met for 2 nights with staff to regroup and refocus on what we needed to work on to make our school successful. We're looking at incentive plans for students, also bringing in other groups for students to be involved in. Because research shows if students are involved in school, they're far more likely to stay and come. They'll want to come. Behavioral issues, everything has been lined out there. Our suspensions, comparative to the last 2 years, are relatively the same, with an increase from the first year. Again, with the incentive plan, our discipline matrix, we have stuck to the policy. What we're finding is that the consequences have little or no effect in changing the behavior. We have reached out to parents to assist their child in making better choices and come to the school and be a part of it. So as of right now, we've had 3 parents take us up on that offer to come in and sit with their student. Chris and I have been talking about an effective in-school suspension program. You want to talk a little bit about that, Chris?
Yeah, we want to keep kids in school because If you send them out, they don't learn. But the problem is, research has shown that many in-school suspension programs actually don't produce any better results than sending the kids home, because they may just be punitive in nature. And we don't want kids just to punish. We don't want to just punish kids. We do want them to learn better behaviors. But we want to bring kids into our in-school suspension. We want it to be restorative. We want to have a restorative component and a component where you're also catching up on your work. You're getting your work done. And this is what's going to take. This is what's going to take time, because lots of people want to fix and they want it now, right? We want to fix one now. If I have a kid in school suspension today, I don't want to see him tomorrow or her tomorrow. If I see him or her tomorrow, I feel like I failed yesterday. And we need our adults to understand that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so we want to design something where, at certain times of the day, maybe we're going to sit and talk. And we're going to talk about why we're here. We're going to talk about what choices we could have made that would have been different. And then we're going to have other times where we're just going to focus on getting our work done. Because often, too, kids bring stuff in. Well, actually, they come to in-school suspension without any work at all. They just show up. The teacher sends them down to the office. They receive in-school suspension. They go in there, and there's nothing for them to do. So we really have to coordinate this. In-school suspension is there for a reason. It's there to make kids better. It's there to make kids better kids, and it's there to make kids smarter kids. And we've got to make that happen, and it's going to take a lot of effort. We want to have someone in the school who's at least part of their position will be to make sure that kids come to in-school suspension with work to do, so that they can get better academically. And I really want to work with Mr. Berman. Mr. Berman is our current in-school suspension guy. I don't know what kind of guy. And he's a great guy. He has a lot of terrific ideas, and he needs a lot of support. So that's really what I have to say about the in-school suspension, about just designing a program both academically and restoratively.
I'm sure the Smarter Balance assessment data was reviewed at the last meeting, and our numbers are what they are. Right now, approximately 100% of students in the middle school are basic or below in mathematics, and 97% of them are basic or below in reading. To address those, right now we have one intervention program called Reading Plus that's being used for 37th grade students, but we're in progress of making a plan so we can structure meaningful intervention for 97% of our students that need the assistance in whatever skills they need to build. We're looking at math data and what other program we can bring in to assist that. Investigating professional development for language arts teachers in reading instruction. Many of our teachers are trained in content, but they're not trained how to teach kids how to read. And that's where we're at. We need our kids to know how to read. Yes, you can.
We also, 2/5 of the math assessment, Smarter Balance assessments, is writing. It's how well you can explain yourself. I'm not sure how many claims in language arts. Well, the whole language portion of the test is all about writing. And writing is something that really, this goes back to Professor Rosebud, Linda. There wasn't a lot of writing instruction. And right now, even in our language arts classes, it's more about reading than it is about writing. So we actually want to be much more distinct about what happens in our language arts blocks. This section is just going to be writing. We need to have kids write. And so this is going to be some relearning on the parts of teachers as well, and what actually is writing. Some teachers may have kids take notes, and this actually came up in a meeting today. I have them write. They were jotting down notes, but that's not writing, and that's not how you're going to be assessed on the Smarter Balance. So writing is definitely going to become a much more integral part of what we do with academics.
We're looking at different curriculums, but also to piggyback off with what Chris is saying, we're looking at scheduling language arts blocks to encompass that writing piece and that reading piece. We're using the goal setting sheets from our math tests and the resources with the NWA Learning Continuum to assist our teachers to identify and plan for needed intervention for specific skill sets for students. That test is great because it picks out exactly what a child needs to work on to be better at what they do as a student. So on the 29th and 30th, we plan on looking at that data very intently and using it in a very meaningful way. I think we have a plethora of data out there, but now we need to use it to make good decisions for students. In math achievement, we're looking at Common Core aligned middle school curriculums to create consistency in math classrooms, but also investigating the implementation of intervention curriculums. What we're finding is a lot of our students don't have the basic skills that we need to be successful in math at the middle school level. And if they're not successful at the middle school level, it's going to be very difficult for them to be successful at the high school level. Okay.
So, some of this, in thinking about math, schools in the district that are successful in math, there's Lakeview, there's Klein, they're successful, they've had the same teachers in place for a long time. And so they've been teaching their curriculum for a long time, they're good at it. The thing at the middle school is the curriculum we use requires a significant amount of training. And this year, we have 2/3 of our math teachers removed. Four out of our 6 math teachers have never taught math before. And the training for this particular curriculum is offered at Michigan State University, like in one particular weekend in the month of June. And if you weren't here, you don't get that training. So Dana and I have a conversation like, really, is this sensible for us? Where we do have the amount of turnover we have, do we need a curriculum that doesn't require someone to go to Michigan State University? There actually is a curriculum in South Dakota. It's used at the high school, and they have a middle school version also with trainers right here in South Dakota. And the training is free. So they send consultants to us for free, which is like a double bonus. So that's the type of thing that we have to begin investigating.
And having that, when we talk about curriculums, again with the math test, it's the same thing for math and reading. Commitment to guaranteed and viable classroom curriculum. This came up with this evidence and suggestions for strategies.
Yeah, it's what Dr. Whitney started with narrowing the focus. Our kids have a lot to learn. There are so many standards that there's no way any one student could possibly learn all the standards. But they don't really need to. In schools all around the country, some of the most successful schools in the nation they determine power standards. And one way to determine that is to take a look at assessments like the Smarter Balance, other state assessments. They release blueprints. We've done this every year with our algebra students who are taking 8th grade algebra. We take a look at what is it that these people designing these tests say are the most important standards for us to know. And we focus our instruction around those standards. So even with the curriculum we have, we could say, all right, for the next 2 weeks, we're just going to learn these 3 standards and we're going to master them. And we're going to design our own little assessment to see whether we've mastered them. And then in 2 weeks, the teacher's going to get together, we're going to take a look at our lessons, and we're going to see whether our kids did master them. And if they did, great. If they didn't, all right, how are we going to tweak it for the next 2 weeks? So it also requires monitoring from Dana and I. We've talked about quarterly, what do I call it, administrative reviews or curriculum reviews, where we meet with the team once a quarter. And we ask the question, are your students making the gains that you said they would make on these assessments? And number 2, what else can we do to help you? Some of the best times I remember at the middle school was Steve and Reed Hickman. We got together every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks we got together, went over all the lessons, the problems they were going to solve, and we just kept doing this. And that was a pretty good time back then. So that's our design. Narrow the focus and monitor to improve math instruction.
Thank you. Any questions? I've just got one on your staff attendance. They lowered your student attendance.
We had an extraordinary large amount of leave without pay the second half of September. Almost a full pay period. And so that really hurt our percentages. It was almost double from the first half of September.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Entire building, rekey, what's that about?
Right now, there's probably 75 keys for doors in the middle school that the only way that we can access some things is find out who has the key, and it's very ineffective. People don't have access to the things they need to have access to. The ring of keys is probably about this big with keys all the way around. So to make life simpler and easily accessed by our staff that need those resources, have it rekeyed. To do what the high school did with 1 key for the classroom, 1 key for the door. Or even key cards if you want to get fancy, but that's where we're at with that.
We've never had an inventory on all these keys.
There's an inventory, there's a list, and certain people have access to it, certain people do not. And it's for Chris and I to have access to the buildings that we need, we would have to carry 2 bags just to walk around the building for vehicles that are after.
There's a board about that big, like that size of that window that has keys all the way across and all the way down it in the safe.
For each room.
So there's so many keys.
Dana, back to the attendance, is it like multiple teachers missing or one teacher with a bunch of leave without pay?
It's paraprofessional that had a lot of, paraprofessional staff had a lot of leave without pay, and they would because they don't get leave until 90 days in.
I guess one more thing, don't want to put you on the spot, Linda, but is there anything you'd like to add? Because you've been here forever and until we vote on it, you're still a part of this district.
Dana and I have talked about key business. We've also talked, this is pretty common for us to know that a lot of the staff that we have in the school are brand new teachers who struggle because they've never had that classroom management experience. And it's really, really hard for them to get the kids in a sitting environment where they can actually learn before they actually learn what they're supposed to be learning. I talked to Chris about the restorative part of ISS. I don't like what they're doing now with ISS, but just what I've heard, that kids are just going in there when it's never been that way before. They're just sitting in there. I talked to Chris too about one student who had to sit and write 50 times out of respect to my teachers. And the staff member saying they were going to have to stand against the wall with their nose against the wall until it fell off. So I'm hoping that kind of behavior doesn't happen at the middle school. And I did share that with Chris. I think a lot of curriculum changes is really a good idea because our staff really have that training that they need to be effective teachers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Cheryl, thank you.
Hi.
Cheryl and Mike.
We are looking at some of the data on the 8/26 through 10/13, 2014. There's a mistake there with office discipline referrals. And I looked at that and I thought 33, wow, that's hardly any. So Mike, we looked it up and it's 127 right there for office discipline referrals. And the suspensions are correct. As you can see, we have about the same amount of suspensions as we did then. We have 35 suspensions, there's 33 there, and there's a little bit higher than the year before. We have 26 types of behaviors that are happening in the high school with 80 students causing those behaviors and 116 office discipline referrals that come down to the office from the 80 students. We have 24 suspensions, like I said, so that's a little bit less, and I did not calculate my snaps attendance, so I'll get that to you guys through an email. Their attendance is pretty bad too. We have a hard time with subs. We have one sub that finally came back. She was sick for a long time. She's an elderly lady. She called today and she's going to be coming back, and we utilize the teachers that have plan times. If a person's gone, then we ask those teachers to give up their plan time and sub for the people that are gone. So every day we have a pretty full list of staff using their plan time to sub for other people. And we have had a number of sick teachers and sick staff. There's flu going around or whatever. I'm sure middle school is experiencing that as well. But overall, our paras are doing really good. They're pretty reliable, and we're not really having too much trouble with their attendance. Sometimes, I noticed when I worked at the middle school, we had a hard time with our paras. I don't know if it's still that way, but they seem to miss a lot. But at the high school, they're doing very well. As for our student attendance, some of the things that we're doing is, last year we started putting out calls at 10:30 and 2:30. As soon as the teachers logged their attendance in, then a call will go out. Brian sends out the calls. And if a student is not at school, a parent will get a call saying your child is not at school. And that goes out in the morning and the afternoon. So we've got a lot of calls from parents saying, where's my student? I dropped them off at school and they're not there. We got a call. And sometimes it might be a mistake. They might have been in a meeting or something at noontime and they weren't marked present at that when they got done with their meeting. But overall, we really had a good response from our parents because they like those calls saying, at least we know our kid's not in school, or if we're saying they're not, and we check on them and they are in school, so we know that. That's kind of been a success for us. We do have a lot of kids that skip seminar and they leave the school grounds and they go uptown, and sometimes they come back and sometimes they don't. So that's very much time, call it seminar time. Our chronic absences, right now we're just following the handbook. The letters are going out, they're going to the courts and everything like they're supposed to. One of the things that we talked about as administrators and with some of the teachers in our CWGs is changing the late arrivals to tardy, because one day we had 77 students that came in late. And that could be any time from 8:50 to whenever. But that was just way too many. So we're gonna change, instead of inputting late arrivals, we're gonna input it as tardies. And if they get 5 tardies, parents will be notified and they're gonna have to serve some time in ISS to make up some of their work and catch up. Because we just have way too many kids coming in late. And some of them have excuses. Some of them might have got here for a doctor's appointment, but some of them don't have no excuse at all. They just go uptown and then they come back when they feel good. So that's something that we're going to implement. We're doing parent contacts, and in the mornings we have our CWG meetings. And right now we're going through the freshmen through seniors, we're going through each class and we're documenting like students that are at risk and why those students are at risk. So each freshman teacher had come up with 5 kids that were at risk, and we're documenting it, we're making a database, and we're gonna come up with some strategies on how to help these students to either catch up, come to school, have better behavior. That would be in the same type of format with student behavior. Some of the things that we started doing last year and we continued this year is that when we see a conflict or a student having issues in a classroom, we have a meeting with a teacher and a student and an administrator. So they all have a voice and everybody can see each other's point of view. Because sometimes students feel like they don't have a voice or nobody's listening to them, and they might have an issue with something, or they feel like someone don't like them, and they need to be able to say that, and the teacher needs to be able to hear that, and the administrator as well. So we're doing that. We do mental health referrals to community resources or community agencies on student behavior, and they come into the school and they get the student and take them for their counseling. The CWJs, like I talked about, also that reflects on student attendance, behavior, and their academics. For the reading strategies, and I didn't add this on here, we have June Pressler that's been coming into the high school, and she's doing training for note taking because a lot of our high school students do not know how to take notes. We got a strategy from Dr. Whitney that we're implementing in the high school, and June is doing training on that for all the staff, and then they just started utilizing the note taking strategy a couple weeks ago. We also have a program called Read 180 for students who tested below the 9th grade reading level. They go into the Read 180 class and they try to get up to the 9th grade reading level before they're allowed to go on to their English time. So that test is done in the 8th grade level, and then if they come into the high school and they don't have it, we do that test there too. For reading and math, we also have the ICU period from 3:15 to 3:45, where every student can use that time to make up work that they're missing. So all the teachers that are ICU teachers, they can go online and look and see, like Mike has 5 assignments out, Cheryl, you have 20 assignments out. So you should have some work that you're doing right now. And they can also give a pass to a student where I send Mike to Miss Broadcourt to do some work because he might be missing. So we're doing that. Sure.
Along with those missing assignments, every Wednesday I'm sending out a voicemail or a voice message to parents that have students that have no missing assignments. Evie, did you receive one of those? You know, which one did you get, the good one or the bad one?
I did. I thought it was a very, very good idea.
But I also call the parents about the students that have 0 missing assignments. Talk to them about having to congratulate your student because they have 0 missing assignments. got a couple parents that enjoyed that. Yeah,
Yeah, it was good.
And he prints off a list every morning and we hang it right by the office and it has all the students that have zero missing assignments and those students know that they get ICU incentive that day. They don't have to go to ICU and just sit there and do nothing. So they get time in the library playing games or they can go in the gym and shoot around or just sit there and listen to their music. So kids seem to really be liking that. And sometimes we make popcorn and stuff for them too. Anything else on here?
I suggested to David that he just earn his spot to become a tutor to somebody that has assignments out.
Yeah.
Then you try to show what you're doing. Obviously, you're doing something good if you have no assignments. Partner up with one of your buddies that has missing ones and help him get them done. Don't do it for him, but
Yep, we have a lot of
encourage.
students that,
Peer pressure.
Yeah.
it does, it's kind of fun to watch kids walk by the board at the office. I'm on it, where are you at? And that kid scurrying around. They put a little peer pressure on each other.
Yeah, we have parents that look at it too and they don't know what it is, so we tell them and then if there's students on there, they really like it. We also have before school and after school tutoring for our students that are behind in any subject area that they can go to. We have the schedules like on the top floor in 2 areas and the bottom floor in 2 areas, so students can see what teachers are tutoring on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday. And they can go to that classroom. There should be somebody there to help. So those are some of the things we're doing in the high school. Some of our needs, I don't know, you guys probably don't want to hear these, but some of our needs are just with our roof that was leaking for so many years, that it has a lot of really moldy smelling classrooms in our building. There's quite a few. Sometimes you can walk in and just smell the mold. And also we have a lot of sinkholes around our building. So when it rains or when the snow starts to melt or whatever, then the water goes in under the basement and the crawl space or whatever you want to call it, and it just either sits there or it's not good. So those are some things, but we like the new building too.
Mr. Reiner left, you lost your chance. Just
We're also
kidding.
going to put in for more cameras on our second floor, on our first floor and also outside. So hopefully we can get some more clear cameras where we can see things because things are happening. And when we go to look, they're so old and they're just fuzzy. You can't even barely make out the kid unless you know what that kid's wearing that day or whatever. And we do have cameras on the second floor, but not on the first floor in the classrooms. So we'd like to get some of those.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Any questions?
No, but you were stealing like 3 other things, so.
3 other ideas.
That's fine. That's fine. All right, Kevin.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I can't sit still. I gotta keep moving around, so I would rather address you guys by standing up. I've got 4 things that I'd like to bring forward and get approval or let you guys know what's going on.
And if you bring something to us, it would probably be, we will be discussing it later on, but you can show us.
Okay. The first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to bring up the run, hide, fight protocol that's been implemented since it's about 3 years, but I'd like to bring it into our protocol that we have existing now to build up on it from what we've already have. That we actually had that in 2007, 2008 when we had that Safe Schools grant. We started that with the SROs and Dana was part of this. I'm not sure who else we had part of it, but I'd like to add that as part of that protocol itself. The run, hide, fight protocol is, just a thumbnail is if something does happen, like a school shooting, somebody with a weapon, something going on within the school, if they can get away, they leave. This is something other than what we had before in lockdown. Second part of that is to hide basically what we had before lockdown. Lock the doors, barricade the doors, turn the lights off, the whole protocol with that. And the very last thing is the fight. if need be, and that would be with the adults, and we wouldn't pressure the children or train the children to do this, but that's that protocol. The second part, or the second thing I wanted to bring up was to request permission to get Class B or Class C commissions for our security guards within the school district. At least to look into what we can do. At this time, St. Francis School Security has Class B commissions. The security at the tribal building has Class B commissions. And these commissions are to detain until law enforcement arrives. The third thing I wanted to bring up was to have permission to talk to all the emergency response, which I've gotten in contact with quite a few. I want to write up the MOU, have you all approve it, and sit down and everybody agree to being a part of this, what we can do for each other to affect the emergency response. And the fourth one is going to be pretty controversial, but I'm going to bring it forward anyway. We have a commission law enforcement officer that I am asking to have a concealed carry weapon in the school on Ty County School District. So these are the things I'm bringing forward, and then I know when you all have your working meeting, I'd like to get more in depth and discuss everything.
I think when we have our board work session, we'd like to have you there so we can discuss this more in depth. How are things going with the safety assessments in all the schools?
The safety assessments are actually kind of mired right now. I've been in the middle school for the last 3 to 4 weeks. We're having issues, but things are starting to come around. So we've got security guards. We had a turnover of security guards. We've got 3 now that I think are going to work out very well. Very well. They're doing very good.
So you still, in other words, you haven't got the safety assessment done for the schools yet?
I have 3 that I haven't gotten to, but the rest I have, and I can bring them to the meeting.
When would you expect to have them all done?
As soon as things start working out at the middle school. I've been pretty much running from school to school, cameras, gang activity. They want me to do different presentations, so I've just been going back and forth. But I do have the ones that I have done. When we have the work session, I can bring them and we can go over it. It's pretty in-depth, but it's fluid also.
Good. Anything else for now?
I'll wait till our board work session.
Kevin, when you do come, bring a list of all your security guards, where they're placed in every school, so we know.
I was going to bring their backgrounds, the current backgrounds that we can get for them, and their application for the commissions, and have you all approve them before we do anything. We move forward.
When you get done with your plans, are you going to share them with the administration or share them with our staff?
Yes.
I think that's one of the first things on the list is to go around in your staff meetings and go through those procedures with your staff. That's a priority. to do that.
Any questions for Kevin? Thanks, Kevin. We'll be talking to you shortly.
All right, thank you.
Carol?
What I put in my report was the indicators that were evaluated on, and the state is coming down December 8th and 9th to our review. They review every 5 years or in other certain circumstances. So that's some of the data that they look at and they collect annually, and then the timelines that we have to submit that in. Typically, we do quite well at collecting information when we need to, reporting it, that kind of stuff. So I just wanted you to have a good idea of like the timelines, what data that we collect in our office. We have lots of databases different amounts of files. And then this is usually what we get for our hard work. I actually framed it this year so the staff could see it. This is 2 years ago data though that we just got in June that we met all the requirements of those indicators that you have a list for. So it's a lot of work. We try to keep staff in the buildings aware of why we collect data so they know why we're asking them to do things, because some doesn't seem to pertain to them when they're looking at the kids every day, but like the testing and any other things we do, we have timelines that, we have to have 100% on. They don't let you have 99%, you have to have 100% in a lot of the indicators. The ones that we don't do well on are pretty much the same that the district as a whole does, would be the math and reading assessments. Typically, our participation in the testing is good though, so we're always looking at ways to, help students make bigger achievement in academic areas. And actually, the preschool this year, their SLOs are on that. So trying to look at the social and emotional part of their development and get that indicated up. So, any questions?
You probably went over this before with us, Carol, and I should have probably kept the notes. It's just a question I have. Let's say you have a child that's on an IEP and you have mapped out that they need to complete this, and this, and this, to be and then is it next you sit down and have an IDP meeting with the parents? Am I getting that wrong?
No, you have to have a annual meeting with parents.
Yes.
And then, first they have to do an eligibility meeting to be eligible for services, and then they have to be annually after that. And then every 3 years, that evaluation information needs to be reviewed to make sure they're still eligible.
Okay, so like whatever you define that you need to work on.
The goals?
Yeah, the goals. How do you ensure that they've mastered those goals and it isn't just something that they did one time and you check it off that they did it, when actually it's not mastered?
Staff do progress indicators and keep track of data for that. Working with kids, like if you would go in and monitor a special ed teacher working with staff, a lot of times they're making marks or collecting data as they're working with kids. And then they do that weekly, daily, depending on the student and the staff, the needs. Some are done more inclusion in the classroom, trying to help the kids there so they don't miss that instruction, so they don't get further behind. So it really depends on the student's need, but there's a specific goal that's developed from the assessment information for that student. If they don't make progress annually, then the goal needs to change. It's not a good goal then, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Carol. Pay bills. 4.1.
Before we pay bills, I'd like to ask if there's anybody here who would like to address the board.
Is anybody here who would like to address the board previously discussed the right information with the superintendent? I think that's our policy, isn't it, Ms. Whipple?
Yeah, but usually in the past
Thank
you
you.
set precedent.
Thank you. Pay bills?
Did we skip that then?
If we don't have I think Ms. Whipple is, wants to cite the policy, and the policy is anybody who has time was previously discussed the issue with the superintendent before they bring it to the board. Isn't that correct, Ms. Whipple?
That's correct. So
Thank
anybody
you.
who would like to speak to the board, I will reserve my board discussion for you. You can wait until then, and I will recognize you and give my seat up.
Pay bills.
I'll move.
Moved by Travis,
I'll second.
seconded by Melissa. Any discussion on the bills? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion carried. 4.2, financial statement.
I'll move.
Moved by Melissa,
Second.
seconded by Travis. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
4.3, federal and state program budget.
I'll move.
Moved by Melissa,
Second.
seconded by Travis. Any discussion or questions?
What is this for? This?
That's the tuition, we're not the, that's we're on the federal and state program. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes. Yes. All those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Out-of-state tuition, do I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Melissa,
I'll second.
seconded by Travis. Chad, you want to explain what that is?
I think approximately 20 years ago, the school district actually lost a court case in regards to tuition down in this area of our county where you'd actually have to drive into Nebraska to come back up in order to get to where the families live.
I see.
So it's a tuition that we paid to Cory Kilgore.
Because they live in our district.
Because they are in our district.
I just didn't
State law is different, South Dakota and Nebraska, to get complicated. We'll end up getting a bill for probably $12,000 from Cory Kilgore. But we set the price here and have for the last 20 years. And this is the price that we pay based on the amount of dollars that the student actually generates.
Okay.
And that's how it's computed every year.
Okay. I just didn't.
It is unique this year to ask you to deny the preschool child.
Yeah.
The state of South Dakota doesn't fund preschool, so that's why we will not be counting that.
I see.
Seriously.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign, motion carried. 4.5, approval second reading JEC on attendance.
Move with a question.
Moved by Travis. Do we have a second? I'll second it. Any discussion?
Before we obviously haven't worked up the tribe yet, but our attendance policy, maybe we need to resend this before we approve it. When we do work with the tribe, we know what our plan is actually going to be. This motion.
And then, so I did have a question on this, and it was the statement that says each building shall develop procedures to encourage regular attendance and discourage excessive and unreasonable absenteeism. Like, does that open up and allow for, like, the high school is gonna do something different, that the middle school is gonna do something different than the elementary school, and then, you know, everybody's doing something different? I mean, why, shouldn't there be like a unified approach to it, or why does, what is that statement for?
Certain buildings will contact a parent, like they have set up a procedure at the high school where by 10:30 or 2 o'clock, which is unique to high school, so that would be a procedure that they would enact.
Okay,
So
I
that
see.
part,
Okay.
the policy will be the consistent policy, how we act on truancy, but their procedures may be unique.
I see, okay. I just didn't.
Or their incentives may
Yeah,
be
part of
unique
it.
too, how
Okay.
they want to incentivize the kids that come to school.
Okay.
So,
Any more discussion? All those in favor say yes. Yes. One yes? Two yeses? All opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
That's the only question I have.
Did you vote?
I did.
Did you vote?
I said yes.
Okay, motion passed. Thank you. I didn't hear you. All right. 4.6, Title VII PAC Advisory Council minus Travis.
I'll move.
Moved by Melissa,
Second.
seconded by Travis. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I'm not gonna vote.
Okay, you're with
Abstain.
4 yes, 1 abstention. Motion carried. 5, Personnel, Administrative Retirement.
Executive session.
Do I have a motion?
4.2 and 5.3. You want to mix it?
5.1, do I have a motion? I'll move. Do we have a second? Motion died for lack of a second. 5.2 is an executive session. 5.3 is an executive session. 5.4 salary adjustments.
I'll move.
Moved by Melissa. Seconded by Evie. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign, motion carried. 5.5, supplemental contracts, moved by Melissa,
Second.
seconded by Travis. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, opposed, same sign, motion carried. 5.6, terminations,
Move.
moved by Melissa,
Second.
seconded by Travis. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. 5.7, resignations.
Move.
Moved by Melissa,
I'll abstain.
Second.
seconded by Travis. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, opposed, same sign, motion carried. 5.8, exec. 5.9, substitutes and volunteers.
Move.
Moved by Melissa, seconded by Evie. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. 8, board discussion. Our new board member. Travis.
Is there anybody that'd like to use my discussion out there? Public? Anybody in the public like to use my discussion? Steve?
Okay, I have a couple things that I wrote down. One thing, this was actually, came about several years ago, and it was talking about having more community and school spirit support. And we talked about the 3 signs coming into Mission that says welcome to Mission. We had discussed this about working with the Todd County High School artist, Chris Leno, to maybe install some new, or create some new signs that would come into the town from all 3 directions. Phyllis is going to do some checking with that to see, as far as financially, if this would, if it would be a joint venture between the school and the city, or if Mission would, pay for that for Chris's work and that. And that's something, that she's going to check into, and I just wanted everybody to know that he is willing to do this too, because I had talked to him. So that was just one of the items, and maybe that can be a future thing, that we can talk. The other deal that I got on here real quick, is this is what I would like to see. I have granddaughters that go through school. I went through these same hallways over here when I went to high school. I've lived here all my life, and what I'd like to see is, and I know what happened a few years ago, the reasoning for part of this, but I would like to see it. It's been really nice seeing Dr. Whitney come through doors and go to classrooms, check out the building and stuff. But I would like you guys to, since you got a new crew here, to talk it over, not just one person make the decision, but all of you, that you all be allowed to come into these schools and take a look and walk around. Not that you're going to manage any type of what's going on or anything, but just to be visible. So let kids know that, hey, this is the head of our school district, the school board, and they care about us too. You would not believe what kind of impact you can have on students by being visible like that. So that's something for you to think about. Okay? One more thing. I'm trying to go fast. Here. Is about kind of addressing what Dana said a little bit. It's about our grades, and it's about behaviors and stuff like that. I'm just going to give you a couple examples, and I'm going to go into this. And I don't know if you guys know the kid that goes home at night, the girl that was an 8th grader that went home. She's the cook when she comes home from school. She takes care of the house. She spilled a boiling kettle of water on her, was in the hospital in Sioux Falls for 2.5 months for that. Do you know the 2 girls that were 6th and 8th graders that stood out at the wake of their father who committed suicide at Parmalee, asking and reading a letter, "Why, Daddy, are you leaving us now?" Do you know the girl that came to me? You probably don't. That came to me and said, "I need help." She was high on marijuana, and she said that her grandfather gave her marijuana and alcohol for her birthday.
an 8th grade girl. This girl got help. I got her to the counselors. They got help. The grandfather is in jail for it. I will tell you that the girl that got burned is recovered. And those of you that know about Lakota and stuff like that, she's one of the best gabubu bread makers in the world. She still makes that stuff. This girl I just saw her at the dollar store is working on a double major in college right now. And the other two that are on, they are now parents, the two girls. But there's hundreds upon hundreds of stories about our kids, what they go home and they have to do when they leave our buildings. You know, and a lot of time their thought may not be on what is 5 times 5, what's an imperative or an interrogative sentence or anything like that. Their thoughts are on that. Do I want all our kids to succeed? You darn right I do. I haven't been in here for 42 years not wanting every kid that walks through that door to be successful. And I tell them that. I said, each kid that walks through that door, there's not one of you I don't like. There might be a behavior that needs to be corrected or improved, but every one of you are in my prayers. And I tell my students that I don't care if I'm talking about religion here or not. They're in my prayers when I go to bed at night, along with my family. Some of the things that you guys talked about for grades and that, you talked about poor attendance, yes. You talked about possibly curriculum. We've been with Connect Math for a while and stuff. Maybe we need to take a look at another avenue. Teacher turnover after a few years. Students' poor social life, family situations. We are 1 to 2 grade levels behind, and then we expect them to go take that 6th grade test and pass that 6th grade test when they might only have 4th or 5th grade knowledge at that time. I try to teach the series that we got religiously. I've been doing it. My students' grades aren't raising either. And it's not because I don't try. I'm there at 7 o'clock or a few minutes after 7 every freaking morning trying to get ready for it. And I would hope that everybody else that's in there, they're giving their 100% effort with their kids, because that's what it's all about. The deal with the behaviors. We got kids that get referrals. Some of them, I wonder with our numbers that were put on there the last time, if some of them were menial things like, were they just tossing a pencil up? Were they leaning back in their chair 3 times? Were they talking just a little bit too much? And then all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. Your referral list is this high because of a lot of those. Was it in rooms where there were teachers that didn't have that good of classroom management because they may have not been trained in it yet? We got a lot of new teachers, and I feel for them. I've seen them. We've had a lot of good, Teach for America. I have met a lot of good teachers that have come out of there, and I've also seen some, and just some regular ones, that have struggled with this because they don't have that experience and that practice. So my thoughts on our curriculum and working together and stuff like that, why not take a look at the schools that are at the top of the pole and see what they're teaching their kids, what kind of curriculum, see if it's something that might work here. I think back when I worked, I'm about done here, so hang on. When I started working at North Elementary down there in 1974, and I would have to go back and check, but my memory bank is trying to tell me this, that Todd County at that time was ranked like 6th or 7th in the state as far as in comparison with the other ones. I remember kids in 3rd grade multiplying, dividing, and doing those operations as fractions as 3rd graders. And we're struggling with them as 7th and 8th graders up here. And I already said the words because I taught language arts as a teacher's aide down there, because we actually taught with the Engelman-Becker program. And those kids knew what interrogative, imperative, exclamatory sentences were. They could write paragraphs and put quotation marks where they belong. Where have we gone from there? I know in 1990 we went to modernization and restructuring, and everybody headed 2,000 different directions. And now we're trying to bring it back together, but we have to work together. I like, people's ideas and stuff, and I'd be willing to work with you on whatever, but I think we need to focus on those things to get things back up. I would love to have every kid be successful. My last thing I'm going to read, it's up on my board in my room. All students can learn to succeed, but not on the same day in the same way. We have to find a way to reach it. That's from William Speed, a sociologist. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder.
So, I had Ashley asked for this to be on the agenda. And I just wanted, and we could do this in exec session if it makes everybody else feel comfortable, but the last couple of months I sat here and
there's a lot of expectation. There's a lot of, and needed, there needs to be an expectation, but as leaders, as this board, I feel very strongly that we need to set that example. And we need to be held accountable. And I think there's been some people that have been held accountable and, took the fall. But at the same time, this board has been here right alongside with them. And I just, for myself, and also for the people that are listening and watching, like, how are we held accountable, right? So how do we get to accept the responsibility for the school district and everything good about it, but not all the bad? And how do we accept that responsibility as board members that our schools are failing and it's not one individual's fault over the other? And we can't continue to blame, well, okay, we're failing in this school, so let's pull this person out and, sorry that you worked here for X number of years, but let's move on. So as a board, I would like to see moving forward, like, if we're gonna be holding these other people accountable, then we better be setting that example and holding ourselves accountable as well. And I asked for this to be a part of the agenda, Mr. Moe, so I don't know why it wasn't. And maybe I'm misunderstanding the process to get something on the agenda, but I really think, like, what Mr. Heinert just said, like, we have to work together. There's no question about it. Like, we have to be able to work together. We have to be able to communicate with each other, and we have to be able to trust each other. There's so much mistrust that exists. I think, last meeting, I'll apologize to you in person. I didn't mean to joke around with you. That's just how I am. Those people that know me very well know that's how I am. And I won't do that anymore in the future with you. But at the same time, what we kind of pick and choose what we do when we want to do it. Like tonight, look at all this confusion. And so I don't think it was my comment to you about calling you Miss Motion or the Travis and Melissa show joking around really painted a picture that we're divided. I think that we have to create that unified vision for this school district in order for any of us to succeed. And we can't, I don't know. I feel like we are completely divided right now as a board, as a district, in the schools. And how do we come together and say, you know what? The reality is the reality. None of us can go back and change that, and none of us can change anybody else. We only have control over what we have control over. And how can we bring our strengths to the table and say, hey, look, I see you're struggling here. This is what I've done in this example. Or, hey, you're really good at this, and how did you do this? Like you guys were doing just now. Like, how do we create that type of environment that fosters that provides you guys, Ms. World Children said the students feel like they need to have a voice. I think everybody needs to feel like they have a voice, and they should feel like they're able to voice whatever concerns that they have, and regardless of, not feeling like they're going to be reprimanded for it or fired for it or blamed for it. Like, we have to create, us 5, including the superintendent, have to create this environment. And I think that's something that I'm game for, but it's something that we have to be consistent with, and we have to agree upon, and we have to communicate about. And I just, from, a lot of things have happened in the past couple months I've been here, and I'm learning a lot, but I also, in my life, have learned a lot about how not to be. And I want to learn more about, like, gee, this is what I want to be like. And that's what our children want. That's what our children need. We talk about all the environments they go home to and all the things people have or don't have, and we want to categorize everything and say, well, you're an 8th grader, so you should be this, when this 8th grader might not have X, Y, and Z at home. Or this 8th grader may have everything at home and the expectation is different. So, like, how do we bridge those gaps, and how do we fill those holes in the Swiss cheese that we have and do it together and consistent? And it can't be, cookie cutter, like it fits everybody, because it's not. Because my oldest children are exactly opposites of each other. They take different parenting, different guidance, different way of handling situations. I have, they're just different. So I can only imagine the 2,000 kids in our district, how different they are. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I just wanted to know, I want you guys to know that that's what, I'm big on is accountability, but working together, being able to trust each other, being able to support each other, and being able to stand up for each other. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Whipple?
Is there anybody else I will give my board discussion?
They're all telling me I shouldn't say anything.
Yeah, Lucy, you've been sitting there patient all evening and you always bring good things to the board.
I guess my feeling is, they don't want me to say anything, so I'm not gonna say a lot of stuff maybe that I might have said before, but I think that the primary thing that everybody in this room needs to know is that the only reason we're here is for the kids. All of us. You know, always put yourself in those kids' position. That's why you're here. It's why medicine, why you're a doctor is for the people that you treat, why you're in a school district is for the kids that come there. And not that you're gonna teach, but it's for the kids who are gonna learn.
As for myself, I would like to apologize about the confusion of the agenda, I guess. As board member, I wasn't aware that all of this was going to take place. And we do have a policy for anybody who's watching TV or if you go out and talk. We do have a policy that says you should go through the superintendent. But I will tell you that I feel like it's the communities here and the public that put us in these positions that we're in and that we're elected into. And we're to be your voice. And if you don't have the time to make that connection with the superintendent or the board president, I will gladly give up my board discussion time for the public. That's all I got.
Okay, motion to go into executive session?
I'd ask that we serve cake before we do that
That's
for
fine.
the public.
Then can we do the first two first and then do the last one with the custodian? Or you guys do that one first and then I can come back in and do the other one last?
This is just a question.
Stay here for the executive session,
Who's first?
No, it's just a question.
Melissa, did you first it?
I first did.
I second it.
I was waiting on you. And I'm sorry.
I'm still listening.